Well, if you look at it critically, adolescent pregnancy has become a major public health problem, particularly in Africa. Now, consequently, the region is known for the high rate of maternal and child morbidity and mortality. But that's not what we're talking about. Since recent times, several governmental and non governmental organizations in some African countries focus on reducing the adolescent pregnancy rate, although a very slow progress has been made. Let me officially welcome you to today's episode of Fafanua Africa. Now, this, like I always say, is a youth based, conversational, and enlightening show where, in less than 60 minutes, we take you through the topical, the trending issues across Africa that affect the youths and provide possible solutions to these challenges that the youths face in their everyday lives. My name is Blessings Musugu, and of course, I am your delectable host on the show for today. So sit tight and let's take you through 1 hour of bliss. Now, at any age, pregnancy and first parenthood produce changes that require adaptation. For adolescents, three transitions occur simultaneously. They must adjust to changes in their family of origin relationships during adolescence, changes in their physical and cognitive abilities, and changes in their social reality. Now, add to this the challenges caused by premature parenthood, and the potential for stress increases. Now, typically, adolescent parents experience stress from five sources, which are relationships with the self, the partners, parents, non-family institutions, and intergenerational relations. Thus, the adolescent parent faces a series of competing developmental tasks that increase the likelihood of stress. Well, that said, today I have the honor of being joined by three amazing guests, and permit me to introduce them right away. I have Damilola Mayowa Owolabi, a parent teen coach in Nigeria. Thank you, Damilola, for joining us. All right, while we wait for Damilola's response, we also have Kuda Kunze, the Director of Women Association of Survivors in Zimbabwe. Thank you, Kuda, for joining us. Kuda, can you hear me?
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, and last but not the least, of course, I have my studio guest, Vivian Ijiemi, a serial entrepreneur in Nigeria. Thank you, Vivian, for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Okay, so we're talking about adolescent parenthood, and I would like for us to go straight into the conversation. Starting with you, Vivian, what is your take on adolescent parenthood?
Okay, so it's really not easy, trust me, and I would like to talk about it generally, not about it because I'm a single parent.
Well, but you feel free to talk about it both ways.
So generally, it's really not easy. It's a period whereby a female gets exposed to things that she has not experienced before. She has probably been reading, if she's someone that actually takes time to feed herself with knowledge. So it's really a different experience entirely. It's not easy, trust me. It is not. There will be a lot of stigmatization. It's either from family or from friends or from environment, society. But it's a lot. It's a lot, trust me. So it's really not easy.
Okay. All right. I'm still going to ask you maybe a bit of your experience,
Okay.
but we're going to come to that. But anyways, let me also ask Kuda, what do you think about adolescent parenthood?
Well, what I think about adolescent pregnancy is that it actually traumatizes young parents. For example, their mind is not yet prepared to be a parent. They don't know how to then gallivant or maneuver in the parenthood season. So I think it then makes them slide into depression, and their self-esteem actually lowers. And that on its own then also opens up for more risk as being a teen mom or a young parent.
Okay. Okay, back to Vivian now. I mean, this is generally up to you. If you want to be exceptionally personal, or what we would like to
Okay.
get your experience of what
Yeah.
it was and what it is like.
Okay, so first off, I would like to say it was a period of ignorance. I thought I knew what I was doing, but anyways, they actually say you only experience things before you can get the deeper knowledge of it. So it happened when I think I was 21. Yeah, 21. I was ignorant. I thought I was in love, and oh well, due to a lot of hanky panky games here and there, I got pregnant. And truth is, mine is a very, because when I talk to people about it, they tell me, okay, so yours is a similar issue. We've experienced it before. And when I start to think about how mine happened, and I'm just wondering, okay, why is mine so different from every other person's own? Now, here's why I said it's different. I notified him when it was early. He saw my parents, and then immediately after the meeting, he absconded.
Oh wow.
So it was a traumatizing period during the 9 months, and I was in school. It was my final year actually, so it was really a lot. I had to have a carryover at the very last semester. It was really a lot on me, and then still I was still ignorant. When it was like few months to my delivery date, I realized I was notified that it was around, and then I just codedly called him. I was still ignorant. I could already called him and I said, okay, please, can you come? Let me take you to my hospital and all, regardless of how traumatizing it was. I took him there. So, a little drama happened like the week before I was supposed to give birth, and I had to go through CS, and that was a lot. Now they were all asking me. It got to a point. My story was very interesting to the people in the hospital. They were asking me, "Where is he? Where is he?" And I told them he's enjoying at home, he's flexing. And they all laughed. They were looking at me like, Madam, are you okay? Like, I know what I'm saying. But they really wouldn't get the exact point, but I was trying to be strong. And then by the time I came out, he came like 4 or 5 days later from the gate. They already asked me, is he the one? I said yes. They started raining insults and abuses on me. I'm like, oh, well, you're coming 4 days after. What if I died? Well, what exactly are you doing here right now? So my point of sharing that detail is ignorance is one. Another thing is if you're being taken advantage of. If I was wise enough or sharp enough at that time, I mean, I was in school, but I was still saying, okay, I'm in love. It's the one I want to get married to. And then I let myself fall into this kind of situation. So it was a moment whereby if I had the opportunity to turn back the hands of time, I most definitely won't listen to him. No, I won't listen to it. So it was a lot, and I'm glad I'm over it. And I went through postnatal depression. I almost killed myself. I went through a lot. So crying is literally it's not like an exercise for me because I've done it over and over and over. But I like the fact that my family was there for me. My society that stigmatized me during pregnancy stage became my very best friend. So they had no choice than to just accept, okay, she's actually strong. It actually made me strong. Yeah, I mean, I'm a serial entrepreneur now. I can boast that, okay, I know certain things at my age right now. I can do certain things at my age right now. And I have someone back home that I need to like, okay, I need to hustle for this particular person. So it's really not easy, but we're going through it.
Well, the beautiful thing about the story is it gave you a beautiful baby.
Yes, most definitely.
And I know that because I've had friends who had gone through that, and at the end of the day, probably they regret the choices they made, probably they regret the decisions they took. But one thing they always say is they would not trade their child for anything because that's like one of the biggest gifts they got from that.
The gift of a child is just it. I mean, sometimes I could be in the house. Like this morning, I was sitting and I'm like, what will I do today? I don't have money. And I was close to tears. And he came to me, Mommy, don't cry, yeah? God will give you money, yeah? So I was stepping out. And then he was like, Mommy, wait. God will give you money, yeah? So having that kind of person back home is a lot. I mean, if he doesn't call me in the next 5 or 10 years, well, I'm okay. I mean, I have my strength with me.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. But also, okay, Kuda, I'm going to ask you this as well. Do we say that, I mean, we know that from time before, and I'm still also going to ask you, Vivian, but Kuda, I mean, if you remember some years back, you see that a lot of people are scared of their parents, when things like this are about to happen, they're like, "Oh, my mom say, well, my dad say." But now a lot of people are saying that parents have become too relaxed, right? They're not as disciplinary as they used to be. Do you think that's true?
I think in most family households, we still have parents that are still uh, strict. They want their children to first get married, then have children. However, we also have other kids who are becoming parents at a young age. Why? Um, we for example, here in my country, we've got a lot of child-headed families. So those children, at the end of the day, they do not have a parent who then um, models on what to do or how to deal with certain pressures of life. Then we then have these young girls getting pregnant at a very young age, which then also adds on to the statistics of teen pregnancies. And like I said earlier, that we do have households where the parents are very strict. At some point, you find a young girl who's pregnant and they are scared of going home because their parents wouldn't take them in because they once had that conversation with their parents and they saw how their parents responded. So they couldn't tell them that they were pregnant. So they then come to us and say, "This is what I am going through. What can I do?" So we do have parents who are actually strict, even in this time and age.
Right. All right. Thank you so much for that, Kuda. Well, we have Dami Lola with us now. Dami, thank you for joining us. We've been talking about adolescent parenthood, and we had introduced you earlier, but for some reason we couldn't get you to join us. But we're glad you're here now. So I'll just quickly like to get your take on adolescent parenthood.
Okay, thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right. Adolescent parenthood is actually not a thing that is so desirable. It is not a fancy thing. It's a thing that changes one's life from one stage till eternity for a a long period of time. And it takes process to heal out from the trauma the trauma and the baggages that comes with adolescent pregnancy. It's a pity that in our generation right now, statistics says that around 7,000 teenagers between age of 17 and 19 become pregnant each year, every year. And around 40% of women, teenage pregnant that are pregnant, um, have no medical attention, and 20% of 30% of them also abort the pregnancy. So teenage pregnancy is something that um, it's a rampant thing and is fast becoming norm in our society. And also, it's a thing we really need to look into. As a teenage coach, I see a lot of this each and every day. Almost every week, we record nothing less than 10 to 12 reports of teenage and adolescent or adolescent pregnancy, which simply means that a lot needs to be done. And we have had issues of cases that had led to death because of abortion, because of wrong information, because of fear, because of shame, because of guilt, and then what the society have tagged this so-called teenage pregnancy to. Yes, I am not saying it's good, but this is me as a adolescent coach saying that it's not the end of life. You can still bring something good and something better out of the life. I I remember that in the days where I was in school, my younger sister at the age of 13 was pregnant, and I had to take responsibility of the pregnancy at that time because my father disowned her. So a lot of information needs to be passed across to our parents right now that if it happens, it is not for us to disown or discard or traumatize their life. We also need to put some things in place in order to make this not to happen. That is prevention is actually really very better than when it happens. But if
Right.
it eventually happens, there are different ways to go about it.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for that, Damilola. I would also like to come back to Vivian, right?
Okay.
So, still talking about the aspect of discipline.
Yeah.
A lot of times people feel like these things happen because people have so much free hand to do whatever they want to do. Do you think that's the case?
Okay, so first off, I would say that there are different ways children are brought up. Society is one, parenting is another. Now, for mine both are pastors, so you can imagine how that is. It was difficult, trust me. To the extent extended family had to call me to the house to beg, and it was so. At that point, I could see that my dad was disappointed in me because he was wondering, what did she want that I didn't give her? Did I purposely not pay attention to her for some specific things? But truth is, this thing happened in school, and I was staying in school. So we can't say that school was a factor. We can also say that he didn't train me well, but it wasn't easy. Now, I would like to say that there are different ways that parents bring up their children. If they do theirs, now parenting, the family has an effect, the environment has another effect. Schooling environment is also another thing. Where the society where the child grew up is also another thing. So we can't say categorically that parents do not discipline. They might discipline them at home, and then when they're in school, they are free. They can do whatever. I mean, your parents are at home and you're in school. They can't be monitoring you. Are you home? Yeah. Are you sleeping? Are you up? Are you in class? So there is a little to what parents can do. But I know for sure that the Nigerian African parents we have, they are disciplinarians.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, they are. They are. All right. Well, it's been amazing so far. But before we go further, we have some opinions of the youth across Africa. Of course, it's a youth-based show, so we want to hear from the youth what they have to say on the streets of Africa. Let's take a look.
Early parenthood has a lot of challenges because you have to be physically, psychologically, mentally ready, and if you're not ready, if you're not so prepared for things like that, you're definitely going to face a lot of challenges. Some of it could be depression. Could fall into depression easily because you don't know what to do, you don't know the right things to do. You can, emotional problems can set in. There could be complications when when childbirth sets in, and trying to get pregnant or trying to make a baby. There could be complications. You could be withdrawn from the society. You just want to be on your own. Probably you feel you're not fitting in. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. So it's not just a random parenting. Is not just a random event that just falls upon you. So you have to be prepared very well for it.
Risk and challenges of early parenthood. One, aborted dreams. So these young people have dreams and aspirations, but then they get pregnant, and all of these dreams and aspirations come to a halt because they now have to cater for their child or children. Some people even find themselves getting married to the person they got pregnant for, got pregnant with, and that spirals down to a marriage of abuse, and it just gets worse from there. And there are also some people who lack support because of this, because we find cases where family members will say, we can't take care of you. If you're old enough to get yourself pregnant, then you should be old enough to take care of your child. And it just continues like that. So they even lack the support to raise their children. And this also leads to frustration. It leads to depression. It's a whole lot. It really is.
While many government-owned and private-owned organizations have done well by providing sexual orientation to schools and classes such as primary schools and secondary schools and places like rural environments where they lack this information, we should also put in consideration factors that also contribute to this early pregnancy, which is rape. And then there's the stigma of early pregnancy. It also varies depending on cultural belief, societal norm. So we see people judging these people without putting into consideration that these people are humans too. what we should do when faced with this situation is to advise them, tell them the need to keep this child, because it tells like a lot on these people, these unfortunate people, and also give them therapy, advise them, put them through on how well to manage the situation.
Well, those were the opinions of the youth across Africa regarding adolescent and youth pregnancy. Let's not forget, it's not just the age of 10 to 19 we're dealing with here. Now, I'm going to ask Kuda. Now, people have made it seem like adolescent pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, youth pregnancy is no big deal, and I would say that from an angle, it's good because sometimes, like Vivian mentioned, the stigma and all doesn't exactly help these people. So yes, in one sense it's good, but in another, in the sense of social media influence, peer influence, where they make you feel like what it's nothing. There's nothing there. So would we say that that is one of the major causative factors to why adolescent pregnancies is tripling per year?
Thank you. I think a lot of people that have kids, they are trying to find comfort in maybe posting on social media, but when deep down the stigma is still there, this low self-esteem is still there. And then I think we need to create a safe space for young women to share, and also we also need to understand what happened, like what Vivian said earlier, comes into play, how you were raised, the environment, school, and all. At the end of the day, if we want to reduce the number of teen pregnancies or youth pregnancies, we also need to go back to the family fabric and see how other kids are being raised in their families, and also help young people heal from trauma.
All right, thank you so much for that. Damilola, I would also want to know, what do you think are the emotional effects of adolescent pregnancies, adolescent parenthood?
Okay, thank you. One of the emotional effects is depression because it can be traumatizing. And the best remedy for this is to be shown love and not to be condemned. But I would like to quickly brief and chip in this. In this thing called teenage pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy, youth pregnancy, I think that we need to go back to the basis. And the basis is the way we parent, the way our parents are being nurtured is not the same way they can in this generation now. Or the way we presently are being nurtured is not the way we can nurture our children presently. We are now in a digital world where so many things influence our children's decision, and things like peer pressure, social media, things like digitalization, misinformation, and so on. And the basis that I'm talking about is educating our children on sex education proper, not just from secondary school days, but from the basis of before they even enter into preteen age, from teaching them about puberty, from opening their eyes to the education that has to do with if you start your puberty, these are the things you will see. These are the things that will come up. These are the things that will happen. You have become a woman. And stop this cultural belief or this cultural way of if any man touch you, you are pregnant. No, that is not how it is. It is high time that we begin to break it down and give a proper, transparent explanation. This is sex. This is who sex is for. When you have sex this way without protection, this is what can happen. I think when they have that understanding, and that understanding can be communicated to our children well if we create good relationship with them. And I'm talking about being friends. It's not just enough to be disciplined as pastors, as parents. as disciplinarian. It's not just enough to just flog, shout, but being in good relationship, having a good communication system with them goes a long way. And by so doing, they won't get into, by the time they want to make that decision of having sex that can lead to teenage pregnancy, they will think they will think twice, and they will think wise, because they now have the knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. So it is going to be their personal decision if they are going to do it or they are not going to do it. Now, coming back to the question you asked me, the trauma, the emotional trauma, which it costs a lot, is depression. And from depression, it leads to all sorts of serious things. And it leads to early deaths. So many of our teenagers have had, on my table presently, I have more than 5 to 6 cases of teenage that have killed themselves just because they cannot handle the experience. Another emotional trauma that they go through is the stigma, which had led a lot of them to take some drastic decisions. So we need to watch it, and we need to go back to the basics, give a proper education so that they will not find themselves in all this emotional traumas.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Damilola. Now, Vivian, I would like to ask if you agree with, the emotional. I know that you've talked about the depression part, the stigmatization. So I would like to ask, was there a point in time where it felt as though everyone was against you? And how did that make you feel? And was there a point in time where people started to support you? And how did that change how you felt?
Okay, so she mentioned something now about giving them early education.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I actually started being active, I had the theoretical knowledge of it. So there was no question you could ask me about it, I wouldn't answer. But I didn't have the practical experience of it. And then when it happened, it was something different entirely. I was wondering, okay, so this is what I knew was far different from what I felt after doing it. Now, as soon as it happened, there was a lot of drama in the house because everybody was like, how did it happen? And then the first thing I heard was, Omo pastor's child. And then the next thing is, you're supposed to be holy and righteous. You're supposed to go to school. That was first thing I started with. And then the next thing is, they've trained you well. Your parents are good people. Why would you decide to lose yourself? Now, no one then thought to sit me down and ask me, okay, what happened actually? How did it happen? Were you so into him? How did you guys meet? You know, those kind of questions that we're supposed to be asking our kids now. And then when I gave birth, everybody was around me showing love, showing care. I mean, I'm like wondering, you guys just like, you guys wanted to eat me off. And then it was different entirely. I felt welcome again because when all those things were happening, it was as if I was an outsider. I mean, I got out to a point, I sat down in my room with my bump and I was like, you know what, let me just end this so that they won't stress themselves anymore. I mean, when it was time to go to the market, my mom was active. I'm like, okay. And then giving birth, they were all there. I'm like, oh, it's another feeling entirely. So it's a lot. If you're not emotionally strong, if your intellect cannot take those things that you are accepting from each of the stage, from notifying them to rejection stage to now accepting you and your child as their own. I mean, now the boy is my sibling, not my son, because they take him as
their own.
Their own, exactly. So it's the confidence I had that went down, all of a sudden came up, and I could comfortably leave the child for them and then do my thing and come back. And then it's all, there's no complaint, there's no, you left him, you got pregnant, that one has not sat you down. So I wanted to address the part where she said it's time for us to start talking to these young people. So of recent, I called my junior sister. I'm like, so you see what happened, yeah? If you feel like you have someone you like, please let me know. I could put you through. I mean, you saw everything that happened during pregnancy and after, and what I'm still facing till now. And then she's like, the truth is, I'm scared of talking to you. I'm like, why? Because she feels like I could tell the folks. I'm like, okay, so I could be your best shot, yeah? I have an experience. So why don't you talk to me about it? And then she became free. She started telling me she found someone. So now I had to make sure that the environment is safe for her, and then she can say whatever it is she wants to say. So the kids nowadays, they believe in internet, Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a lot to actually get their attention, make them feel comfortable before you can talk to them. But it's actually very right to talk to them at an early age.
Yeah, and I would just like to chip that in as well, that the thing about social media, because sometimes, like you said, these kids are scared of talking to their parents about their situation. So they would rather take solace in, on TikTok, especially when you Google teenage parents, you see tons of them, a lot of them. And the thing about it is, they don't exactly show you the struggles that you're talking about now. They only show you, oh, how the baby's beautiful, how this, how that, get ready with me with my baby and stuff. So people are like, okay, this is not so bad, and that's not the narrative we're trying to push out there. So I was also going to ask, was it difficult for you to tell your parents about the pregnancy? How did you bring yourself to telling them about it?
Okay, first off, it was difficult. It was very, because I was in school and I figured out and I went for a test and then I went home. Then I went to do just small because I know by the time I'm coming back again, it's gonna take a time. So my mom noticed, and then she was like, "Are you fine?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine." You're not fine. Let's go to the clinic. I'm like, no. So I was able to talk to her and say, okay, let me go to the clinic. I'll call you when I get there. Lele, she was on phone. How far are you there? What are they saying? Have they taken your blood samples and all? And then when the results came out, I called her. I'm like, yes, pregnant, busted. It's like, okay, come on. So I knew a lot was going on in her head. And then she called my dad, and then my dad didn't bother to call me. I think it was much later. I was like, hello, are you fine? Okay, come home. I knew that was just a way to bring me home. And then so we'll now sit and talk about it. So how did it happen? What happened? I was scared, really. I was. I was.
Okay. All right, Kuda. I mean, looking at I think right now Vivian is our major, is the host of this show. But looking at the entire story, do you think that the youths know the risks well enough?
Sorry, please repeat your question.
So I was saying that looking at everything we've heard and things we're seeing online, do you think that the youths know the risks well enough? We just talked about how sometimes, especially adolescents, they go online and see these people, they don't show the struggles of early parenting. They only show the beautiful part of it, and they make it seem so stressless. And then, it makes the youth feel like it's not that big of a deal. But do you think that the youths are well aware of the risks associated with it?
The truth is, the youth is not well aware of what then comes with being a parent when you're not prepared. It's okay to post pictures, but then your mental health is also important. Are you prepared for it? Because there is the depression that then comes in, but then no one talks about the depression. No one talks about those people who then commit suicide because they were not mentally strong. We also have youth, a lot of youth abusing drugs and alcohol. Sometimes this is a way of them forgetting. So I feel like the youth is not aware. They don't they don't have all the information that then comes with being a parent. They only see the good part that you mentioned, the pictures and all, but then what happens when you get pregnant, especially when your partner is not ready to be a father? Because in most cases we find young mothers raising these kids alone. Some of them, they raise them at home. That's if the parents actually take them in. So, like Vivian said, she then saw that her family was actually helping her even emotionally. She actually saw that, okay, fine, earlier on they were asking me a lot of questions, but then now they are accepting me. We find that there are other young women who actually experience the anger of the parent, the disappointment of the parent, of which these things are not being talked about. We need to talk about all those things. And also we also need to also factor out the reason why people are also getting pregnant, because yes, we also find this peer pressure, but then peer pressure is not the only thing. We also have families actually, because of poverty, they then force their kids into early marriages at the end of the day. So all those things, people should actually talk about those things, that before seeing me post this child, I went through A, B, C, D emotionally. And for the next person who wants to get pregnant, they should actually plan to become parents so that they can be mentally healthy, so that they can also raise their kids in a healthy environment when they're also emotionally well.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, before we go further, it's time for us to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Do stay with us. Well, thank you very much for staying with us. We're still talking about adolescent parenthood and pregnancy, and I still have my amazing guest, Damilola Maiwa Owolabi. I also have Kuda Kunze and Vivian Ijiemi, my in-house guest, who has been feeding us experience, not just spitting fact, but giving us experience as well. But quickly, I would like to ask Damilola. Now, a lot of times we talk about what the teenagers could have done differently, what the adolescents could have done differently, but what do you think the government can do?
Okay. In the aspect of the government and the society, if there is no society, there is actually no government. The place that government can come in into the situation is to provide education. Again, I repeat again, education and information through diverse means, through the same means they get misinformed, through social media means, through friends means, through school means, and through materials means. Okay, let me break this down. Part of my job as a counselor, as a teenage coach, I go to schools and we do something we call campus stores, secondary school and our institutions. And we wrote out um, the challenges that teenagers go through, that adolescents go through, and part of it, we turn it into a course outline, and we introduce it to the government, and some of them accept it and also introduce it into the curriculum of the school. So we want it to be a broad thing where they can, every schools can have this and also preach this. Now, we study biology in schools, we study chemistry, we studied BSc this, we studied BSc that. But these are subjects that they will, yes, they need to know. But nobody is talking about the everyday challenges, everyday thing that they go through, which is causing a lot of trauma, a lot of, you know, things in their life. So it's not just education should not just be anymore now in this generation, because we keep growing and this generation keep advancing into a digital world, and we quickly need to um, jump or develop or mix them at that point. If not, they will leave us behind. So I want to encourage the government, or what I think that the government can do to this is to, help out with the curriculum of the school. We call it something like education, psychotherapy education. Psychotherapy education is an education that talks about sex education, that talks about how to handle peer pressure, that talks about drugs abuse, that talks about teenage pregnancy, that talks about everything that teenagers, adolescents in their secondary school days, in their university days, in their polytechnic days, they go through every day. And the question is, it's not as if there is someone out there talking about it as such. We don't talk about it in our churches. We don't talk about it in our mosques. We don't talk about it at home as parents.
Right.
So that is why we need to bring it in again as education system. into,
Okay.
and also do flyers, do materials, do posters, use TV medias, use different channels in communicating this out there to them.
All right, thank you so much for that. Well, we have some reactions on social media to this particular topic, and we're just going to take a look at a few of them, and we'll be right back now. Olu Yomi Ososonya says, churches should have pre or early parenting counseling just as they have pre-marriage counseling. Not everyone is fit to be a parent, not ready to be one. But with family and cultural pressure to have a child, they just create another dysfunctional societal foot soldier. That's from Olu. Then Stefano says, let's not get stopped with words. Humans can be broken. Doesn't mean they cannot get fixed, improved, or enlightened. Better early in life. Parenthood was a great start. We took that out. Life's mentorship has suffered and delayed. The human experience can be challenging to overcome. That's from Stefanos. Now, Nicole says, teen parents need love, support, and people to believe in them. Kindly leave your judgment and doubt at the door. To any teen parents out there, I believe in you. Never stop chasing your dreams. Well, those were the reactions we had on social media. Coming back, I would like to ask you, Vivian, what would you, looking back now, what would you have wished that your parents or siblings or family did better or did differently?
Okay, so before I got into school, I had this intuition that never have sexual discussion with your folks. Yes. I told myself that even if I have feelings for a guy, I would never have a discussion with them. Now, that was out of ignorance here, because truth is, if I had notified them when this whole charade started or was about to start, I would have been guided because they were actually ready to listen. So we decided not to talk or not to carry our parents along. At least we should have a sibling that we talk to, really. Someone that we can share our deepest secrets with, someone that we can tell, okay, so he's acting this way, I don't know, what can I do? What do you think? Someone that has experience more than you, that you're just trying to find your foot being an adult, because truth is, adulthood is not easy. Teenagehood is not easy at all. That's where you are getting to know your body, you are seeing body changes. I remembered when I started seeing my flow, I came out and I was shouting, oh Lord, if I wasn't sat down immediately and schooled about it, I would have had a different or jumped into conclusion that actually wasn't necessary. So it's actually good to talk, and yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that. And finally, Kuda, any final thoughts about this? Kuda, I think your device is muted. Could you unmute your audio, please?
Oh.
Okay, go ahead now.
I'm saying let us show the young teens, the young mothers, let us show them love and support, and also let us understand them. And also for those who are still young, who are still growing up, first, before getting pregnant, get to understand what comes with the responsibility of being a parent. And also, we also need the church, the government, and every organization to actually start having information around this. I think we would also advise on having youth friendly information that doesn't really make someone feel guilty about being a young mom. I think just generally teaching them about the risks and the consequences of being a mother at a young age.
Thank you so much for that. I would like to use this opportunity to thank Damilola, to thank Kuda, and of course Vivian for being amazing guests on this show. Well, with that said, we've come to the end of Fafanua Africa for this week. And if you have any comments, do well to drop it on our social media handle. We are at News Central Television. And don't forget to tune in same time next week, same station, as we discuss youth issues that pertain to society and how to tackle these issues. I remain Blessings Mosugu, your delectable host on the show. Till I see you again next time. Bye.